Out on the tide goes the pilot boat. There's a ship waiting to sail, and by law she must have a pilot aboard. He's the expert who knows all the local channels and hazards. Only warships and small craft may enter or leave port in Britain without him. He's a member of a select company of highly skilled seamen whose services, even in this radar-guided age, are vital. Once the ship clears harbour, his job is done and he returns to wait for the next one. Some ports run their own pilot service, but the principal pilotage authority in the United Kingdom, which supervises and licenses some 700 pilots, as well as tending lighthouses and sea marks, is Trinity House, with its headquarters on London's Tower Hill. Every Trinity Monday, the Master, the Duke of Gloucester, and the 10 elder brethren, distinguished seamen who form the board, walk in procession to nearby St. Olave's Church, with the honorary elder brethren and some of the 300 younger brothers. At sea, on board a pilot cutter in the East Coast shipping lanes off Harwich, a group of pilots relax, each one waiting his turn of duty. When the call comes, off he goes to the waiting ship. Pilots are independent fellows. They're individualists whose badge of office is their yearly license and whose livelihood depends on their manner and their accurate judgment of the conditions around them. Although responsibility never completely passes from the ship's captain, when the pilot arrives on the bridge, he is virtually given command. Back on board the cutter, more pilots are now needed. A radio call is made to headquarters ashore. From headquarters, the call is passed on to the homes of the pilots next due for duty. Their homes have to be within a certain radius, and like doctors, they're on call day and night. So it's goodbye to the family, but not for long. The pilot is seldom away for more than a few days. And now, to meet the varying and unpredictable demands from afloat, another group of pilots is assembled, ready to embark in the tender which, in any kind of weather, waits to carry them out to the cutter. For pilots in the Needles, Isle of Wight area, there is no waiting and wallowing in a cutter. A new pilot station with living quarters is now established at Totland Bay, and pilots are taken to and from their work in fast motor launches. Here at Gravesend, alongside the new Port of London Authority Thames Navigation Service building, is the oldest and busiest pilot station of all. Here, pilots who brought ships in from sea turn them over to other pilots who are experts on the river, and vice versa. Pilot Henry Brain is about to take over 20,368 tons of floating responsibility homeward bound from Buenos Aires, the Royal Mail liner Amazon. As the launch approaches, he recognizes old friends. Handling a giant like this in a crowded river may look a frightening task, but to the pilot, it's all in a day's work. On the liner's bridge, he's greeted by the captain. A signal flag is hoisted. Its meaning the world over is, I have a pilot on board. Now Henry Brain takes control. Ships can be obstinate, unwieldy, sometimes full of mischief. A trained seaman gets used to these tricks in time, but in a strange ship, a pilot has to spot and overcome them immediately. And there's the problem of handling the tugs. Passengers who look down from the decks of big ships to find they are surprisingly berthed alongside the jetty don't always realize that they've got there without thuds and jolts through the judgment and skill of one man.
Hard at port. Stop starboard.
When the ship is secured and the pilot flag struck, the captain signs the pilot's voucher. Pilotage fees are paid directly to the pilot by the ship owners. The amount varies with the ship's tonnage and draft and the distance she's been piloted. A ship's first landfall is usually a lighthouse. By the time the pilot takes over, navigational interest has generally shifted to channel marking buoys. These buoys come in all shapes, sizes and colors. Some flash lights, others make noises. Their characteristics help to identify them and to show what they are actually marking. To serve their purpose, they have to be tough, reliable and securely moored. The Trinity House depot at Harwich is never idle. The Channel buoy's big brother is the light vessel. In addition to conventional sea marks, the pilot of today has a growing regard for radar, that penetrating eye which pierces darkness and fog. More and more harbour radar stations are springing up, and perhaps one day a ship will be talked into port, much as a plane is talked down to earth. The operations room of the Thames Navigation Service at Gravesend will soon have a complete radar map of the Thames estuary up to Tilbury, and all the latest tidal and traffic information will be available by radio telephone to anyone afloat. In Southampton water, the number of huge tankers running to and from the Fawley refinery builds up with the traffic of Southampton docks. At the Calshot signal station, the whole picture is seen by radar. But in spite of radar and all the other scientific aids to navigation, the licensed pilot is far from being redundant. It is human judgment that is irreplaceable, in ships as well as in aircraft. The scientist may be able to pinpoint a ship and say exactly where she ought to go, but she needs a firm, experienced hand to make quite certain that she goes there. The liner, you'll remember, is a lady.